Our scripture reading is John chapter 7, verse 53 through chapter 8, verse 11. They went each to his own house, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more he bent down and wrote in the ground. But when they had heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, sin no more."
So if you were going to try to describe the life of Jesus in just one phrase, in one statement, how might you do that? Sounds a little bit challenging, doesn't it? There's probably a lot of different ways that we could figure out how we could summarize his life. But one I want to present to you today is this idea that Jesus lived with mission. He knew exactly why he was on earth. And he came to do that very thing. And he directed his entire life, all of his energy, all of his time, all of his thoughts towards his mission. And over the course of his life, you see him bringing that mission to all kinds of different people, the insiders and the outsiders, those on the margins and those right in the center, popular and those who may be outcasts. In John chapter 8, though, we have this story about Jesus bringing his mission to the broken. And when I say broken, what I mean is those people that are experiencing incredible difficulty in their lives, that have faced really incredible challenges, that see themselves broken and destroyed, no hope, no future, unsure of what's to come. Maybe people struggling with drugs or alcohol addiction. Maybe people with relationships that seem like they're not able to be repaired, or people that just don't know how they're going to make it because they've made such a mess of their lives. And sometimes we can be a little bit insulated from those situations, or sometimes we're in the middle of it. And in those situations, it can feel oftentimes like it's hopeless. Well, what we see in the life of Jesus is that he brings this mission to people who might seem broken. And in this story in John chapter 8, we see Jesus bring this mission to a woman whose life seems like there's no hope. And what I want us to see is here's how Jesus brought his mission to the broken, and what we can learn from Jesus on how we can do this very thing. We can learn from his presence, his posture, and his proclamation. Let's start first of all with Jesus' presence. The fact that he is there. Now, this time right now is a pretty hostile time for Jesus. He's at the point where he's agitated their leaders enough that they are really frustrated. In fact, they're ready to kill him. And yet he continues to show up. We find him in this story there in the temple teaching. And if he were smart, he really probably wouldn't be in the temple still teaching. But we see that his presence is there because he cares about his mission. And the fact that he has decided to be present put him in the position or the opportunity to be able to serve. You see, his presence, or as I like to call it, his faithful presence in that place, gave him the opportunity to bring his mission to a person that he might not have been able to bring it to if he wasn't present. Ask yourself, where are you throughout the week, in your days? Where are your feet actually planted? There's something about the way that we live in this life today that makes us think we don't have to be present where we are, but we're missing so much of life and the ability to bring the mission of Jesus to where we are because we're not living where we are. We're stuck on the internet or in some social media site. We're dreaming and wondering about different places, but we sometimes forget to look where our 2 feet are actually planted and say, how can I be faithful to Jesus where I am right now with the people that are around me? You see, Jesus probably should have bailed. He probably should have been somewhere else, but he chose to be present where he was. And the fact that he was faithful in his presence, that he decided to continue to serve God regardless of what was going on, where he was, put him in the opportunity to meet this woman. His faithful presence prepared him to bring his mission to the broken. And as you think about your life, where do your 2 feet reside? And is there brokenness around you? I can be almost certain to say that somewhere where your 2 feet take you, you will encounter people who are broken. They may not appear like it. Maybe they won't have all of the external challenges and problems that you might go, oh, yeah, that person's broken. But I can assure you that where your feet take you to the job that you have or the school that you go to, the market that you shop in, the places that you exist, the youth sport events that you might attend, I promise you there are people surrounding you that are seriously struggling with their life, that are broken. And just being present is where this begins. So we see, first of all, from Jesus, the fact that he was present, he was able to serve. But the second thing we learn from him is his posture. If it was Jesus' presence that gave him the opportunity to serve, it was his posture that empowered his service. Now, if you watch Jesus in his posture in this story, it's kind of interesting. He does something actually really kind of weird with his body. In verse 6, when they bring this woman caught in adultery, they put her in front of Jesus and they're accusing her and saying, "What are you going to do about it, Jesus?" And he calmly and just quietly kneels his body down and he starts writing in the dirt. And it's not until they walk away that he will then stand back up with regards to this woman. It's very interesting, isn't it, that his posture kneels down and then it stands up. And what we learn about his posture is this, that Jesus kneels to serve the broken, but he also stands up to defend the broken. He's willing to do both. And so often this criticism, whether it's fair or not, is leveled against us when we are part of what you might say is the religious world, right? Oftentimes people outside of our circles will say, well, you all are just critical, you're judgmental, you think you're holier than thou, you think you're better than me, you stand up and look down your nose at us who are not as, quote, good or righteous as you. And, Jesus just flipped that on its head. And that was true in his day. The righteous religious people did think they were better than the tax collectors and sinners, the people who were the broken ones. They did think that. But Jesus took that and he flipped it on its head. And he showed them that I am here to serve you. He did it so much so that he was actually even accused of being a drunkard and a sinner who would hang out with tax collectors and sinners. He even risked his own reputation to be able to flip that script on its head. And in his posture, we see his deep belief system that I'm here to serve the broken, not tell them how great I am or how bad they are, but I'm here to lift them up and serve them. Now, there's 2 really important things that his posture teaches us. It shows us in this story. The first one is that it restores the focus on the woman. Now, you might think that she is the center of this story, but the reality is she isn't. These Pharisees, these guys that are important, they grab this woman and they drag her to Jesus and they throw her down in front of Jesus. But it's not really about her. They really don't care about her sin. We know they don't care about her. What do they really care about in this story? We learn that they actually care about Jesus. And not just Jesus, but they care about destroying Jesus. This woman is a pawn in the game that they are playing. And by kneeling down, Jesus is restoring the focus back to this woman. This is really about her. Let's ask these guys, what do you really want to do with her? What do you think is right? And in the way that Jesus deals with this situation, he's bringing the focus back to this woman. Okay, you've caught her in adultery. She's done something wrong. What should we do about her that's going to help her? And the second thing we learn from Jesus and the way that he kneels down and then stands up to defend her is that it, yes, restores the focus back to her, but it also restores her dignity. She is a human being made in the image of God. She may be caught in the act of adultery. She may have been doing something that is abhorrent to God. She may be even doing something that they themselves would have never done. Reality is probably they caught her with one of their buddies, but we don't know, so it doesn't matter. But maybe she's doing something they would never even thought of doing. That still does not make her less than anyone else in the world. Let me ask you, when you see and think about people who are really broken in this life, that are hurting, that have actually, even of them, their own will, made a mess of their life, do they still, in your eyes, have dignity? I'm not asking, should you pity them or feel sorry for them? Because we've never been called to feel sorry for people or to have pity upon people. We've been called to have mercy, but mercy still restores dignity. Jesus looked at this woman and still saw a child made in the image of God who deserved to be loved, cared for, and served. She just got off course. She was distracted. She was messed up in her life, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve respect. And so Jesus, in his presence, gave him opportunity to serve. In his posture, he broke through the barriers to actually connect with her and bring this mission to her. But the way he really transforms her life is through what he proclaims to her. So being aware of and even finding people that are broken in your life and bringing comfort and love to them is a good thing. But it's not the ultimate thing that we as disciples have actually been called to do. We're not just mercy ministry people. He actually calls us to proclaim something. When Jesus was leaving this earth, he told the 12, here's the thing I need you to do. Go make disciples. Mark says, go preach the gospel. Luke says, go be witnesses of the resurrection and preach repentance and forgiveness. The thing he was constantly calling us to do is teach and proclaim good news to those who have been living in bad news. And so that's what he does for this woman. And his message is twofold. And this twofold message is more than just taking a broken person and helping them for that moment feel better. It's a message that transforms their life. And here's the two things that Jesus said to her. The first one is this: your past does not define your future. Do you see that? The beautiful message of Christianity is this: your past, however bad it is, does not triumph over your future. It's not greater than your future. It can't ruin your future. Sure, you may carry with you into the future of your life some consequences, some challenges, some difficulties. But your future is not defined by your past. Your future can triumph over your past. You notice how Jesus says it to her. He says, okay, woman, go, sin no more. I want you to move forward. And when you move forward, I want you to leave your sin behind you. Her sin is less than probably an hour or two old. And can you imagine this? It's less than an hour or two old, and Jesus is already telling her, leave that 1 hour or 2 hour old sin behind you and go forward. We are awful at this, even with ourselves, aren't we? You know, we might have the capacity to forgive other people, to see a way to be merciful to people, to be kind to people, but we are actually pretty bad at being compassionate to ourselves and receiving this message. Go, sin no more. Leave that life of sin behind you. Your future triumphs your past. Now, it might sound nice and compelling and interesting, but how do we do that? We've got to be able to let go of those things, to find a forgiveness that releases us. And that's why his second message is so important. Your future triumphs your past, but how? Message number 2, you are not condemned. Condemned. You're not condemned. You are released, forgiven, set free. Have you received that message? And do you let yourself sit in that message? And do you accept the great benefits and blessings that come with that message? That your future triumphs your past and you are not condemned. Now, not to nerd out too bad, but let me get a few technical details ironed out here with you. Do you know the difference between being condemned and feeling guilty? Because sometimes we get these things confused. Feeling guilty is a gift from God. It is that conviction that's in our soul that says what we're doing right now or what we're involved in is not good, it's not right, and we should move ourselves out of that. Thanks be to God for giving us the conviction of guilt. But guilt is not the same thing as condemnation. Condemnation is the sentence of judgment that comes once you are found guilty. You're condemned. Here's the punishment that you have to endure. The reality is all of us are guilty. But Jesus Christ stepped in to take our condemnation. We're not condemned. So this leads us to the million-dollar question as we bring all this to a close as we think about this story. When Jesus looked at this woman and said, "Your future triumphs your past, and you are not condemned," did Jesus break the law of God? You see, the law actually did say that this woman and the man that she was with should have been stoned to death by the people who found her. So these men who drug her to Jesus should have actually grabbed the man, her and the woman, and drug them out of the city, taken stones, and stoned her to death. That's what the law said they were supposed to do. So when Jesus said, "I'm not condemning you, go, you don't have to die," did he break the law? I want to give you just a second to think about that. Did he violate the law of God? Well, I'm sure you already know the answer to some degree. The answer is no, because Jesus was perfect. He never violated the law. But the real question is, how did he not violate the law? If the law was they need to die because of what they've done, how did he not violate it? Well, in that moment, Jesus said, "You're not condemned. Leave your sin behind you. Go free." Because he knew that that adultery would have a death, but not her death. It would be his. When Jesus let this woman go free, he was forecasting into the future that the righteous, just God of the universe would punish that sin at the cross. And because God is just and righteous and does the right thing, that sin would be punished on Jesus. She does not have to bear that punishment. Isn't that a beautiful message? That's the heart of Christianity. So let's land the plane for ourselves for just a moment and then see how we can take this to the broken. Ask yourself, out of all the guilt and all the shame and all the ways that you have fallen short, do you accept, do you believe, do you adhere to, do you hold on to the reality that that sin was punished at the cross? Or are you allowing yourself to continue to be punished? Are you carrying the weight of condemnation, not letting Jesus carry it on the cross that he bore at Calvary? You see, God is just and righteous, and this is a legal thing. This is, for God, this is legal for him. He's saying, "I punished your sin at the cross. Have you accepted that?" And if you're still trying to pay for your sin, or you're still trying to carry the pain of it, and you're still trying to fix it, you have not actually let yourself receive the forgiveness. You're not saying, "God, I trust you that you did punish this. I'm still going to try to fix it. I'm still going to try to make it work." You got to receive what Jesus has done for you. That you are not condemned, not because you figured it out or because you become righteous. You are not condemned because Jesus died for you already. And so when you encounter the broken because you're present and you serve with a posture of humility, and God provides you an opportunity to proclaim a truth that that person's future triumphs their past. They are not condemned. They can move into the future free. We've got to link that back to Jesus. They got to know it's Jesus that sets you free. This woman in this moment might not have known that. I'm sure Jesus came back around to teach her of that. And I'm sure this story probably was included in John because at some point John told this story and maybe met this woman. But the reality is, for us, we've got to be present with a posture of service and a proclamation of hope. And if we do that, if we're present in our world and we're serving and we're ready to proclaim the glory of the gospel, we will bring the mission of Jesus to the broken.